Yo, not here once again, finally, and we're gonna do the little PvP talk through kind of like learning thing that I was discussing in the previous video. I'm pretty bad at PvP. I'm trying to not be bad, essentially, and this is where this video comes in. I'm just gonna be looking at a few games of note in my past couple sessions. Nothing too crazy. We're going to use the acronym GoPro to sort of focus our minds on what could be going wrong. Go is globals and objective, so like each spell you press plus the plan in the game. The pro aspect is positioning, reactions, orientation of camera, and that kind of stuff is the more nuancy stuff that will help you get better, or help you have better outcomes rather in your games, but they're the less egregious mistakes potentially depending on the circumstance. So that's our little meme acronym that we're going to use. I'm not sure if it's actually the best way to evaluate, but that's what I'm going to go with. So let's get into the games. Game 1 versus Resto Druid Warrior. I'm just going to talk you through the game and then we'll slowly backpedal our way through the footage to sort of discuss the specific globals, objectives, etc. And obviously right away you can see my focus frame is a little bit messed up with the party frame. That gets fixed after this. It's the first game of the day, I didn't realise. Which again suggests that I wasn't really looking at the right things. But here we're waiting for the druid to drop his duration of life bloom a little bit. We want to open so that the life bloom ticks, but then doesn't actually like remove our damage. So we waited a little bit for the damage to go out. Popped up Nature's Grasp on the opener, along with Fairy Fire Mangle to keep the shreds high. The positioning from the druid makes it hard to shred, which definitely makes a difference. It's definitely the correct kind of play. To where a lot of the damage is. The issue here is that warriors do a lot of damage to us. It's just a state of matter of fact, right? And the whole idea is that I'm peeling warrior, and Fruity's going to try and keep us, like, get us a window of uptime on the druid to burst him down. Playing the pillar like this though was very decent play positionally from the druid, and from our perspective, I'll go through it slowly in future in a few moments, but positionally we were very, very poor here. We didn't really get enough scope to peel the warrior, and also in terms of we probably could have reset. So that was the first game. It was quite quick. Most of our games are very quick, which is not always a good thing, because if you watch the top rated Feral Rogue, they're managing to play super well deep into the game. So that's where we want to get to, and we are trying to use their footage to learn and stuff, but it can be tricky. So going through it again here, very slowly. There's a big mistake coming up inside the first 5 globals or so, and it's on the globals perspective, which is the fundamentals. The first 2 are fundamentals, as I mentioned. So here we've got good globals, pounce into Fairy Fire, into Mangle. So that sets up the shred damage, and it helps rupture if Fruity ruptures. But he's exposed to put out more damage, and here it was. Hang on, I just missed that because it happens pretty quickly. So here we press maim instead of rip. So the problem here is that this is our kill target. We have bleeds up on him, and in a scenario where Fruity is getting gibbed by the warrior and there's no bleeds on this druid, maim would be a good choice, because it would be able to maim the druid, keep him in place, and go and cyclone or root the warrior. But neither of those things are the case, right? We're full Zug, and I haven't even communicated it, let alone I just pressed it almost out of habit at times, and just like muscle memory sometimes when I think that there's going to be casting involved. It's a bad global. Everything else is fine so far, but this is a terrible global, and terrible globals kind of kill you, and you'll see why. So there's less pressure here, and you can see him. I have to peel the warrior here because he's on Fruity, trying to get roots up. Pops escape artist here, and now the druid has a really good time. Like, he trinkets the kidney. And here we do have the opportunity potentially to decide to switch to warrior, but he does have trinket, so it's a little bit of an issue. So we decided not to, and I think that is still correct at this stage. I think training druid is correct in terms of the kill objective, but the objective goes wrong here, because if you see, it's hard to tell because of the overlap of the debuffs from the focus target on the party, which does get rectified. Fruity's about half HP here. He's also stunned, as you can see from Mace, which is, pretty obnoxious at times. Druids, rogues get absolutely destroyed by warriors in that scenario. So at this stage, obviously this happens quite quickly, but when he's topped up to 70% via NS, I think that's NS, I'm pretty sure it is, and Fruity is stunned, at this point I think we should be booking it, running away, trying to peel the warrior, and essentially get them off us, get maybe a re-stealth, potentially just hotting up and, basically getting everything back to normal. Because I have, super healthy mana. I've got 5.6k, you can see. So I can easily pick us up as long as the warrior gets kited a little bit. And that's probably where we should be doing, right? But we don't. And that's a key objective failure as well. There's also a positioning failure coming up too. So here I get feared. And I'm about to trinket it, as you saw earlier. But I trinket and move to the right. If I move to the left here, I have a chance of rooting here, right? But he pillars me, obviously. And I do peel him with the feral charge. But here I get kicked, and again, this is orientation, right? My camera is facing into nothingness, and it's obviously because I'm so fixated on getting this peel on the warrior, but it's still, like, there's no real excuse for it, right? And he says twist the camera, make sure I'm seeing where the druid is, and then I can potentially fake cast this charge, right? So now I'm locked and cannot peel, and I've just feral charged, so that's on cooldown. So you see the predicament here, right? I have to either push druid here or bash. And I decide not to bash, which I think, again, is potentially wrong. I think I should have bear formed, hit the warrior, bashed him, and maybe called for a reset. Again, there was an opportunity to reset several times here. I do get a string of crits here on my auto attacks, and the druid does get a tiny bit low. If I had an Omen of Clarity proc there, he might have died, and I might have been able to solo the warrior. But that's the game giving you the victory rather than you winning it, in my opinion. Like, you have to be a little bit harsh. There's definitely like, to learn, in my opinion, you have to be harsh on yourself. And here there was several opportunities to reset, which we should have taken, or attempted to reset at least. If we get outplayed on the reset, shit happens. But overall, this game had a really bad global, some very awkward positioning, and objectively, we probably should have reset. The kill target. Alright, game 2 against Warrior Rest Druid. It is a harder matchup for us. I was going to show a Rogue Mage game, but it didn't go out how I wanted to in terms of explaining and having an actual good content essentially. So I've left it out. So here we pounce on the regrowth. It's quite important. We don't want to get the refreshes. We also slow damage, as you can see, still pretty much 100% because we're waiting for that bloom to go off before we start doing damage. And then you see the garrot go out, mangle, etc. Trying to put damage out. And I put up Nature's Grasp here, and this is super, super important, as I mentioned, against warriors. I might have wanted it one global sooner, because the warrior hits me, but now he's straight onto Fruity. And this is quite typical of how the game's played. The warriors spend 1 or 2 globals on me, because I'm the first one to come out, and I kind of want Nature's Grasp to happen then, if it's ever going to happen. It does proc in future, I believe, but it's nowhere near as impactful apart from that opener, because you kind of want the druid to have to run a little bit and stay away from the warrior. As I mentioned, there was a really bad global here, and it is a meme again. And it's a consistent problem, and this is again why looking over your game is really good. You can see that my habit seems to be a very poor maim global when I'm killing somebody. Like, maim is, I believe, 30 or 40 energy, so if you look at my current energy pool, I'm at 19. That means I'm getting another shred, or I can just rip, or refresh, rip, can bite. Bite is a little bit awkward at times because of the way it works, with the higher energy, more damage kind of thing. If it doesn't crit, it feels like it's a wet noodle, waste of energy. But either way, there's better globals here. I can choose one, but this is not it. Again, it does panic some healers. I think it panicked this healer a little bit, which is great, but at the same time, it just wasn't that good. We got a little bit lucky there. As I said, we had the blind into the cyclone half. It wasn't communicated. It was literally pot luck to some degree. Nature's Grasp procs here, which is pretty good on the mace stun. We definitely don't want to be taking any more damage. And here the druid gets a bash resist, and then he goes for the clone. And this is the mistake the druid makes. The druid here has no hots up. He has 2 stacks of wound poison. Abolish is about to take 1 stack off. So he's got one wound stack on. So he's actually in a pretty safe position if he just gone bear and run the pillar, or hot himself up and gone pillar, something like that. Anything but this, essentially. I don't think he needed Cyclone here. But maybe a better player would say he did. I don't know. But it felt wrong from this perspective. So we abused that, which is good. Fruity called out. I remember watching this back with sound. And Fruity calls out saying, I'm going to stop this clone, stops the clone, and we just absolutely annihilate this druid. But in terms of how we played overall, it was kind of okay. The problem is this Cyclone global, it works out, but it's a really bad global, to be honest. Like, Watch here. He trinkets, right? If that's a root, if I just root him here, that's 8 more seconds. Like, sure, if we didn't communicate, so that's a problem in terms of the blinding. But if I root him here, he's still just rooted. You know, like the root DR is gone. He's like just gonna sit there. So the clone against non-gnome warriors, like gnome warriors feel more clonable, but it runs a risk of getting spell reflected, right? He doesn't have the rage for it here, but still, it was a little bit fortunate. And it should have been a root, I think, if I'm being really critical of myself. Obviously, some peeling is peeling, but you know, you want to go for the best option. And this should probably be a root. It was fortunate that he trinketed and it hit, and it actually kind of mattered a little bit. The Nature's Grass procs there, but arguably he sits a root two globals earlier, if we're being nitpicky here. And yeah, we kind of abused a mistake here, which was great. We communicated here, which was a good, you know, scenario. I said I can't get the Cyclone. I think there's a bash resist. Let me rewind this a few seconds. Yeah, I go for the bash. I don't get it. Wait, I don't push it. Okay, so I thought I pushed it and I didn't. So that's again a big mistake to some degree in terms of globals. That should be a bash. But fortunately, you know, Fruity covers my ass there. We kill him. Like, that's kind of like the comp. We sap a window like that and we just burst. Or rather just feral damage. And yeah, it should just be root spam on warriors typically. And that's something I wanted to point out. Like, you can look at these games where you have a nice easy time, which arguably this game was a nice easy time, but roots should be the play. And I didn't do that. So, and the main was pretty bad. Overall, though, I thought it was a good game. And this is one of the games where you give yourself a little bit of a positive slant, right? You see that there's rooms to improve and things you can do better, but overall, you kind of executed a pretty well-organized plan. The only real lack of communication and poor globals came in 2 instances. One was completely solo, just me on the main, and in terms of the blind Cyclone overlap, that was just us not talking and just knowing that we needed to CC the warrior. So yeah, overall, it wasn't too bad, but again, room to improve. If warrior trinkets the blind, maybe if the Cyclone lands and he trinkets that, which he might have done, we could just wait out the DR and blind him, stuff like that. So it's one of those things, right? We could get better. There are some people who subscribe to the idea that you should only clone the kill target if your rogue has blind up, which, you know, maybe that is what we should be doing. Maybe I need to be more preventative of the hots with Cyclone. Maybe that's an room for improvement too. If you know anything about that, let me know, because I'm all about getting better. I have no illusions that I'm good. But let's move on to the next game now. Alright, so we got game 3. I forced a rogue mage in here, and as you can see, we've sapped the rogue in the open. And this is typically what we find. We find the rogues underneath the mages, usually against double stealth teams like us. And this is textbook how I want it to go. So the mage makes a small error here. I would have rank 1 blizzarded on top for longer, try to get the sap wear off. The mage decides to drink, I guess, to bait us in. And this is perfect for us. The pounce is huge. The pounce garrot overlap, big damage from bleeds, kind of like evasion proof. And the stun obviously allows him not to dodge. We get resist on Fairy Fire, which is bad, but not the end of the world. Shit happens. But ultimately, we do get evasion up. The cheap comes out. I do charge the poly. The problem is, Fruity already pre-popped the cloak. So I probably should have communicated or asked, or there should have been some communication there, because kicking poly is great in a vacuum, but overlapping with the cloak, the pre-cloak, not so great. It obviously keeps wound poisons off Fruity, so that's a plus. But at the same time, it's like, we didn't need to do either of those things. We could have done more pressure. But evasion's down on the rogue, and he's just taking all the bleeds, and we're running away. So the problem I have with myself here is, as you can see, I kick this poly. I then attempt to bash, but it's on a half global. I go damage here, and then I get step into kidney. Now here, I unshift, but realistically, I shouldn't be unshifting. I should be going for the Barkskin. Barkskin should go up here. I trinket it because I think I'm in danger, which is correct. I believe I am in danger here. As you'll see in a moment, I get chunked pretty low. Force the mage to aggressively blink though, which is always a plus. You always want to make the mage blink into you, ideally, at least to my mind, because then they can't blink you when you're already low. For the blink arcane missiles bullshit that they always do. So it was a good execution by and large, but there was still that lack of communication on some small things like the pre-cloak, the kick on the poly. I should have bark skinned. It's a major problem. The resist on Fairy Fire meant that my globals weren't perfect in terms of like damage output and annoying the rogue, but ultimately it was a very well executed game. But there's still these things you can clean up, right? And that's kind of what I want to show this game. It wasn't any special. You can make a lot of case for the fact that the mage could have done a lot more in this game. Should have kept blizzarding here, but just to watch it through again. We get the sort of like pressure we want. I don't actually get a rip up in that because evasion is up, which is a bit of a problem. But the kick on poly is nice, especially if we hadn't pre-cloaked. Again, communication issue. But here, when I go for the damage and get step kidneyed, I really need to be popping Barkskin here. And it's something I have improved. This is a little bit older, this footage. I don't have belt yet, so this means it's been about 5 days. So this is 5 days ago. And I've definitely improved. I macroed belt and barkskin together just to doubly make sure, but I also just do barkskin, by itself normally at times as well in a much better sense. So this game goes pretty straightforward. I heal up behind the pillar. Fury just annoys the mage to stop him killing me. We essentially play terrified of mages that are decent, or in fact they don't even need to be decent half the time. But overall, it's like even in these games where most globals are kind of perfect in some ways, or at least can be argued to be the right choice at the right time. There's still those inconsistencies, right? We got to work on communication so we don't have, feral charge, which has a cooldown, a relevant cooldown, alongside, pre-cloak. If I know he had pre-cloak, I could have saved the charge for perhaps a different poly after cloak or something like that. Nothing came out in this game because the rogue was practically dead, but maybe in a different player would play it differently. All these if statements, but ultimately the overlap wasn't great. Barkskin was a real problem. At least it forces the mage to spell steal you at the very worst case scenario, where you won't get first global. It's still one global less damage in you. So Barkskin is important there on the kidney. I think the problem is that I kind of thought I was trinketing already. So maybe that was the thing, but either way, Barkskin should go up in that scenario, go back to Bear, go behind the pillar, a little bit safer with the Barkskin play. But again, overall good game, right? We basically executed our exact objective. Our globals were pretty on point, especially Fruity's here with the Regarot when we need it to. And he's just dead at that point. But the whole no Barkskin thing, Nature's Grass procs really late. But yeah, it's scarier than it needs to be, put it that way. But mages are just scary outright, so I don't hate myself too much for that one. But overall, that's kind of the games in summary. I was going to create a little memetage at the end of me raging, but all my clips don't have my audio in it, they only have Fruity's audio. I'm going to rectify that for the next session, so you'll get your memetage next episode where I'm raging or tilting or completely shocked by some sort of outcome. But if you like this kind of content, I know it's not perfect. It's more of a freestyles type video. I'm not great at PvP. I want to be great, but I'm not, right? And this is the purpose of the video. I'm talking to myself essentially about what I could do better, and maybe it's interesting to you. And if it is, do all that YouTube bullshit that everyone begs for, right? The likes and stuff, they really let me know that, hey, this is actually not awful content. And that would be helpful. Otherwise, if it's not that popular, whatever, man. It's all good. We can do something else. But yeah, thanks for listening, and that's about it.